So we had the pleasure of speaking with Gregg Phillips today, earlier in the day, actually, from the Georgia show, and he's going to discuss some issues which happened during the week. Bill, I'm going to let you run with it.
Okay, that sounds great. So, Gregg, congratulations on the dismissal of the Konnech case that they've had against you. That was wonderful to see.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Appreciate y'all. Thanks for having me too.
Observations maybe about what drove it, and maybe what drove it at this time, if you can share.
Yeah, I think there were a number of things happening. First of all, we took all of the data that we had gathered and some video that folks hadn't quite seen, and put it all into a new website that we have called OpenInk, open.ink.
Mm-hmm.
And within 24 hours, they were asking if we would agree to a settlement or a dismissal in the form of a settlement. And after some, lawyer working around, 24 hours after that, we had it done. So certainly the publishing of all that information into OpenInk was part of this. The second piece of this is they had discovery due next week. Our lawyers had done an incredible job, an exhaustive job of putting together what we wanted to see in discovery. And frankly, we at no time ever believed that they would be able to withstand discovery and would ultimately pull out. So it wasn't a total surprise, but the timing with OpenInk, I think we may have applied a little more pressure than they were expecting and pushed that out.
Yeah.
And then the third thing that's happening is the data that was gathered during the raid of the Konnech offices by the Los Angeles County DA and law enforcement in Michigan gathered hundreds of terabytes of data. So they've been trying to figure out how do they review all of that data. LA has some pretty significant, California has some pretty significant laws relative to the review of that data before you can actually bring charges on the data. And so they've been skittering around trying to figure out how they're going to deal with all of that. And this is grapevine stuff. There's, not breaking any news here, but they've kicked this can down the road now since January the 8th, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But it appears they're bringing it to a head. And frankly, based on what we understand is in that evidence locker, there's no possible way that Konnech could get out of this. And then the final piece is, I hate to be so wordy about it, but since you asked, the final piece of this is there was no evidence. This entire claim was based on an allegation that we had hacked their US-based servers. In other words, obtained illegal access to their computers in the United States. That was false. And so the very premise of their argument was false in that it alleged a crime that did not occur. And so they were saying, okay, you committed this crime and then you defamed us with all the information that you found. Well, they themselves have said there was no hacking. Anyway, it's just a mess, and we're happy that there's some justice out there and that this thing's been dismissed. But there's some atonement to be had here. There's some hell to be paid for having put us in jail and done the things that they've done to us. That cost us nearly $1 million in legal fees, and as they say in TV land, paybacks are hell.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Gregg, real quick. I mean, obviously, we're pleased that has resolved for your situation, but how do we take this more to a national level? We're involved in multiple states nationwide. In Florida, they have this election integrity law they're trying to pass, which prevents transparency into the data from the machines, the EL52 reports, whatever, where they've found 20% in some counties blank votes, which are obviously not true. So how do we bring the evidence that you are putting out and apply pressure to legislatures such in Florida and elsewhere?
Well, we're going to go after them, and we're going to go after every single jurisdiction that has Konnech involved. I think Florida has 5 or 6 counties that Konnech operates in, and we're not just going to be aggressive, but we're going to be focused and target our aggression at these counties that chose to keep Konnech in place, in part because Konnech had lied to them. Now that we have an affidavit from from a former employee who says that they required that he lie to the counties. We're going to take all of the data that we have. We're going to take all of the affidavits we've received from Australia, from these Konnech employees, all of the data that we gathered during our research, and we're going to go to these counties and we're just going to let them, either stand up or shut up, right? I mean,
Do you know how many counties in Georgia are involved?
I think just a cab in Georgia was involved, and
so we need to apply pressure there. Yeah.
Absolutely. You can look back into the news, Bill. You may remember this, that when this whole thing came up last fall, Konnech lied to them, and then they lied to the public. So
right.
DeKalb needs to come out and make this thing right.
That's right.
This was every single thing that Konnech said was a lie. We have affidavits, we have proof, and it's time for these counties that have gotten away with these BS lies to pay the piper.
Well, it is inexplicable why, with as much public feedback as DeKalb got, and I was privy to a lot of it, that they decided to just plow forward. And the one of the explanations they used is, oh well, it's safe. It's on a it's on a Microsoft server that we control, and it's like, wait a minute, where is it? Oh, it's in the cloud. Oh my goodness, you control the cloud, do you? So,
yeah, and I would say they made even a bigger mistake in DeKalb, because what they did was they brought the firmware out of the cloud and left it in, or connected it into the DeKalb databases. So it would be something like, okay, so you're committing a crime, so we're going to take the criminal activity that's occurring inside of your system and put it into ours, and everybody thinks that's a good idea. I mean, this is dumb. I mean, it's like it purposely ingesting malware.
Yeah, it's remarkable. So one of the things you mentioned it earlier, they claimed that you were defaming them, but wasn't it interesting, if folks were watching this carefully enough, the very charges they brought against Eugene Yu were the things that they were claiming were false. Oh no, we didn't do this, we didn't do that. And yet the charges from LA indicated, hey, we've got evidence that shows you did all of this stuff. Just remarkable.
Yeah, as I said, I mean, all of the data that they collected, LA County collected when they went to the Konnech offices, is in a lockbox in Los Angeles County. Everything that's in there not just corroborates our, what we found, but they learned a lot more. For instance, there's a really interesting little tidbit here. When this went to court the first time, when they arrested Eugene Yu and there was a court hearing, one of the people that they noted in the court hearing, guy's name slipped my mind, but their project manager, that's what they called him. He was also he was also listed on other documents as the Konnech CTO. Well, this guy lives in Barcelona, Spain. He worked for Seidel, and all of a sudden he's showing up as the Los Angeles County director. And then when everything blew up, he's on Ding Talk telling everybody, hey guys, I have, covering his butt, because they had it was all cameraed up. So they were watching this raid unfold, and he's writing things into Ding Talk to clear his own name, or into Jira, saying, hey, I've been looking at this, and having all of this data in China, and Chinese programmers having passwordless access into all this space with all this PII in it is a bad idea. And so this is the Konnech project manager / CTO who lives in Spain, used to work for Seidel, and is guiding data back and forth between the United States and China. And then when he gets busted, he starts complaining about it.
Does this verify any of this stuff that like McInerney and others were putting out 3 years ago? Do you think?
We don't know, because it's a good question. We think there are definite connections. For instance, there's evidence that Seidel and Konnech had some sort of a no password handshake underneath the covers to hand data back and forth. I don't know much about that, and we were just getting into it, trying to figure it all out when we went to jail. But but if you think about, so why is a Spanish company, gathering data from a company whose servers are in China, and why are they handing data back and forth? And because CITL actually counts this, creates the counts. That asks a lot of questions. And then there was that thing in Wisconsin, Todd, you may remember here a while back, or Bill, I'm not sure which one of you guys covered it, where they uncovered that all of this data seemed to be leaking out to other entities through some sort of a rotating proxy. And as you really put all those pieces together and think about them, they don't maybe mean a lot individually. Like, CITL, that I don't, we know what we know about them, but why would they need a passwordless API with Konnech? There's just a lot of questions.
It's funny
Interesting.
as you go through all these different issues, isn't it funny how the same names, the same companies keep bubbling up with relationships to new things that are found? We've seen it here in Georgia just recently with connections between public officials and some companies that seem to have some interesting directions and so forth. It's same names again.
Greg, let me ask you, before you move on, are you worried about the information that they have in LA being destroyed? Or, I mean, California is obviously part of the matrix.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I am actually. That's one thing that was sort of attached to our case that we think ultimately maybe they were most worried about, and that was an order to preserve from our court to LA. In fact, one of the things that LA County said was, well, we don't have enough money to get mirrors of all of these servers. And so we said, we did it. We'll pay for it. I think they were saying it was going to be $200,000 or something crazy. And we found somebody in Houston that would do it for $8,000. And sure enough, the court gave us the preservation order. I think what you're going to see, Todd, is you're going to see some other jurisdictions, obviously not DeKalb, but you're going to see some other jurisdictions that have concerns about this, or possibly even some other secretaries of state or attorneys general in places like maybe Texas or Florida or somewhere else that really do have maybe a little bit of a stick, because the company was operating there, but these states need to understand what's happened to them. They need to understand that this isn't just poll worker data. In places like Pennsylvania, there were direct attachments to the entire state's voter file, 8 million records, and you start thinking about, okay, well that's not bad. Well, maybe it is, and why is CITL attached to that, and why are programmers in China working on it, and why are the servers in China, and why is our data in China at all?
Yeah,
and there's just a lot of questions that still need to be answered here. But I suspect in maybe somewhere like Johnson County, Kansas, or maybe Florida, or maybe somewhere in Texas or something like that, you're going to see somebody come out and say, you know what, that preservation order they had was really important. It's already written. Let's find some judge that lets us take a look at this stuff too. This is important. The fact of the matter is, this should be the United States government doing this. This should be the Department of Justice. This should be the Department of Justice doing this. But
it's not going to happen.
Our view of it is, they had their chance, right? I mean,
we are the United States, and states have rights, and if they're not going to do it, we'll do it.
Indeed. Yeah. When the LA County investigators and law enforcement showed up at Eugene Yu's office, I understand that there were 2 FBI cards, business cards on his desk. And one of the things that we were asking for was to have those two agents deposed.
Sure.
I know who I worked with during it, during the counterintelligence op that was run after we turned all that data over to the FBI. I knew who I was talking to. I'm kind of curious, are those 2 business cards that were on that desk, were those the same guys? Are they different guys? Was there another op going on? Was the op against us? Was it against Eugene Yu? Who's calling on who about what? But the fact of the matter is, we went to jail and not one of them stood up. The FBI was advised what was happening, and they said, I think they told the court that they had no interest in this case. So Cool. So they have no interest in it, and neither do we.
Yeah, it's funny throughout all these months with all the pitsters doing research and again, finding connections and so forth. They didn't stand up and say anything about it. It was bizarre. You know, you'd
Yeah, it
think
really
they'd say,
was.
well, wait a minute, we're not doing the stuff that seems to be.
Yeah, Bill, we took all of that data from all of those researchers, and that's what we posted in Open Inc. Open.ink. It's basically a transparency site that we built because we need to be able to put all this data somewhere. You know, Google's not going to keep it. You know, Bing's not going to keep it, or Microsoft's not going to keep it. So we need somewhere to house all this stuff. So we brought it in. We built this amazing AI-driven search engine. A little bit like the way Google does it, except we didn't exclude data. Now you can go in and search on all this stuff. We're creating these special collections, of which Konnech was the first, and we've got a lot more to come. So if they think that we're going away, or that all of this data is going away, or that we're going to stop looking at things on the border, or the Darien Gap, or what happened to the J6 guys, or vaccines, or anything else, you can expect to see all of that show up in Open.ink.
Wow. You know what's interesting is that they've become irrelevant. I mean, you know, we got off all the communist networks several years ago because we were forced off, but we don't miss them. I mean, these people are destroying their own business model. So there's so much opportunity for, you know, America First entrepreneurs to come in and just take their business.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. And you know, shows like yours, I mean, these shows are becoming more and more and more important. And the reason is they are the place where folks are able to get information, right? So if a researcher goes to Open Inc. and finds a whole bunch of cool information, writes a Substack about it, that's one thing. But as the prevalence of shows like yours, and we've had some success on Patriot Games and other shows that were on. I was on Bannon the other day, and somebody told me that my little 10-minute segment had 250,000 views.
Yeah,
these shows are the future.
Yes,
of all of this.
So we'll post the link to Open Inc. But it sounds like there's a lot there now regarding Konnech, but a lot more to come. Yeah. So
yeah, I think we've got about 10 terabytes loaded up, but we'll be at a petabyte before you even know it. We're going to post a bunch of the video from 2020, 2022 up there. It's going to be a place for us to, let's just call it a pressure valve, right? We've got some things that we need to share.
Yeah, but the bad guys were putting some pressure on you when you first tried to stand it up, weren't they? They were doing everything they could to keep that from public view.
Well, CDM should help you get that out.
Yeah, we had it taken down first time in August of 2021, or excuse me, August of 2022. And we worked and we worked and we worked and tried to get this thing up and running. And just every time we stood it up, they'd take it down. We put it out in beta in January, and something like 10,000 attacks in 3 days. And even since we hardened it up, re-released it here in the last week or so, they were telling me we're getting like 10,000 attacks a week now. So I mean, it's nutty, but they're afraid of this, right? They're afraid of the white hot light of freedom is frightening to those that want to obfuscate and lie and steal our basic liberties and freedoms in this country, and we're just not going to have it.
I have one last question for you, Gregg. There's been a lot of people that have stood up and had some courage like you and faced the fire and went through the trials. Talk to us about your spiritual, I guess, revelations during that period. I mean, many people are saying it really hardened me, and it was the most spiritual time in my life.
Yeah, it was for me too. And I went and did the Camino de Santiago in Spain. I was diagnosed with cancer in 2019, and rather than go the traditional path, I decided I was going to go walk 500 miles, and really renewed my faith in all of it. Came back, COVID was going on. I was going through all my the drugs and radiation and surgery and all that nonsense during 2020. And then all of this stuff launched. So it's been basically nonstop since I got cancer in the summer of 2019. I can say that from that time forward, and just that experience on the Camino really helped me harden my own faith, and to be absolutely certain that that I always recognize that the only way is through the cross. And as all of these crazy things have unfolded, and whether, crazy, movies and all of this stuff with Konnech and, attacks that we're constantly under. And then even going into jail. I mean, the one solid thing that has always been there, always is there for me every single day. I use the Bible app. Everybody uses different things, but I've been on this thing for almost 4 years straight now, and I'm there every single day. I'm reading, I'm studying, I'm refreshing my own faith in God. Even while I was in jail, I spent pretty much the entire time reading and rereading the different relevant books. I've read Daniel, about being thrown into the lion's den, and God's angels come in to seal the mouths of the lions so that Daniel would survive it. There's so many parallels these days between the books of the Bible, both Old and New Testament, and what's going on with us right now. And so I encourage people every single day. I've started doing this, inviting people into these Bible studies or Bible plans that are in that app. And Catherine and I have just decided that this is an important part of our day. So we begin every single day, all the things that we do with prayer. We're reading, we're studying, we're understanding. The people we're surrounding ourselves with are God-fearing and strong believers, and it's making all of the difference in all of the things we do, because we always have that to go back on. So we start each day and we end each day with the prayers. We do devotionals together. We bring our friends, colleagues, just people on social media into these devotionals with us. And Todd, I'm not even sure where we would be. For me, it's wholly sustaining, right? I mean, just to know that I'm in jail on some random, charge, but yet there are thousands of people praying for us. When we were in there, the last day we were in there, a few minutes before we actually received the order from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals to release us, there's a state rep in Texas named Steve Todd. Steve came in to see us and said, "Hey, I'm here because there's hundreds of people outside praying for y'all in a prayer vigil, and I just wanted you to know that was happening." A few minutes later, he walked outside. It starts pouring rain, and there's a video of this somewhere. I'll try to find it and send it to you. But these folks are out there singing, folks are out there praying, and there was this massive clap of thunder, and they just kept praying through it and singing through it. It gives me chills even thinking about it. We heard the clap of thunder, I mean, as we were walking out of back to our cells. And just to know what was happening out there, and that these people just stayed out there during a driving rainstorm, thunder, lightning, everything. They just stayed out there and prayed for us. I mean, that's sustaining is the only word that really comes to mind, but it was such a beautiful thing. And we think about it and talk about it almost every day, that so many people stepped up into that void, I guess, that was left between what I consider to be judicial misconduct and us being thrown in jail. And, people were just begging for something. They get out there, pray. They get out there and stand in a thunderstorm, sing and pray. 5 minutes later, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals issues an immediate order for our release.
Wow.
And people don't think that's real. Come on, man.
Wow. Yeah. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Greg. I appreciate you. Bill, do you have anything else?
No, that's good. Thank you so much, Greg, for making time for us. Well, I'm sure there'll be other opportunities as we go forward, and we hope the success continues. I bet it will, for all the reasons you just listed. So.
Yeah, Todd, Bill, I appreciate y'all for having me so much.
All right. Take care.